Nothing on the Bonnell Foundation's Living with Cystic Fibrosis podcast should be considered medical advice. Medical advice can only come from your CF physician. Cystic fibrosis can be a devastating diagnosis, but living with the disease can bring positivity and a new appreciation for each day. From the Bonnell Foundation in Detroit, Michigan, it's the Living with Cystic Fibrosis podcast, sponsored by Viatris, Genentech, and Vertex. Here's your host, Laura Bonnell.
I'm so excited about today's podcast guest, Lisa Bentley. She is incredible, and if you have not heard of her, you are in for a treat. Lisa began her career as a math and computer science teacher. For 7 years, she did that, but she had a dream, and it was sports. In 1999, she chose it as her career path and never looked back. Lisa raced for 20 years as a professional triathlete, and yes, she has cystic fibrosis. She won 11 IRONMAN races, participating in more than 70 races. Lisa became one of Canada's best triathletes and was ranked top 5 in the world for over a decade. She has had several top 5 finishes at the Ironman World Championships in Hawaii. She represented Canada on multiple national teams and finished 6th at the Pan American Games in 1995. At 54 years old, today she is a speaker and the author of An Unlikely Champion, a television commentator, and a coach. She was inducted into the Etobicoke Sports Hall of Fame in 2012 and the Triathlon Canada Hall of Fame in 2014. So, Lisa, it's wonderful to talk to you on this podcast. It's been exciting to learn about you from our mutual Canadian friend, Beth Van Stone. So, wow, is all I can say about you. You're amazing. So, welcome.
And thank you for having me. You're our neighbor there in Michigan.
Yes, we are. And you have done so much in your life. And the first thing I wanted to ask you is, even though you're not competing, as far as I understand it, in triathlons anymore, are you still running every day? What are you doing?
It's funny. I still wear a lot of hats. And sometimes I'll say to my husband, I feel so bored because I don't have the same kind of purpose. I mean, you always go in and out of that as you move on from careers. I mean, I had a really exciting career racing around the world. There's not much that can compete with crossing a finish line and being fortunate to cross it first sometimes and being in wonderful places. So it's hard to follow that up. That said, I'm not bored. I just really need I'm someone that really needs a lot of purpose and a lot of context to need a lot of stuff in my life. So I'm super busy. I coach athletes. I do speaking. I wrote a book. I do a ton of podcasts just like this. I have people reach out to me about cystic fibrosis. I have people reaching out to me for advice on different things. I consult different groups. I do sponsorship for triathlon in Ontario, and I wear that hat, also sometimes as a former athlete. I still go to Hawaii Ironman every year, but I'm there really as, Canadian mother figure supporting our athletes and, singing the old Canada theme. So I'm involved in a lot of different ways, and, I could get off this podcast and there'll be an email there and then I'll say, hey, how about this? And I'll just yeah. And so I love being busy and I love giving insight into lots of different things. So yeah, coaching, speaking, those are my main day-to-day things, working with triathlons in Canada and supporting the sport.
And you're still running every day?
I am. Yeah, I am. And I mean, a lot for my health, as well as the fact I was a professional athlete for 20 years. So it's kind of hard to move away from that. But I run with my dog. So, I mean, I've had so many running injuries through the course of my career that I was kind of at a crossroads about 3 years ago where I was a candidate for foot surgery. And I just kind of said, well, I'm really happy if I can just run every other day with my dog. I don't have to be running the Boston Marathon and doing things like that. And so the advice was, if you're fine to say, I'm done with going hard and going fast, don't have surgery. That's what I opted for. And I feel pretty good, actually. But I run with my dog. I still ride my bike. So I coach athletes, so I take them out for bike rides.
Okay.
So I still have to stay in relatively good shape for that. I swim. I've taken up some rowing. So yeah, I keep pretty active with all that as well.
You sure do. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think that's incredible. And of course, we always say the age of people with CF because everybody always wants to know how old are you and blah, 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 and what's your journey been? And so that's kind of where I just wanted to go to next. You're 54 years old. And when you started with CF, I don't think that there were enzymes in capsules.
Yeah.
I think that only came like 30 years ago, but correct me if I'm wrong. So how were you diagnosed? How did your CF journey start?
I wasn't diagnosed till I was about 20. So relatively late. I was always a sick kid. That's the irony of it all. Is I was, the pharmacist would call my mom and say, do you realize your daughter's been on antibiotics for like 9 months? And I think at the time, I wasn't diagnosed with CF, and it was just like I was sick. So the doctor would just keep throwing antibiotics at me and not really doing a mucus test or anything. Like they didn't know what was growing in my chest.
Mm-hmm.
They just threw the typical antibiotics at it. And really the only cure was in March, my mom would, put all the kids in the car and mom and dad, we drive to Florida and throw us in the salt water and we come out healthy. That was basically the best remedy of all. But I was an allergic kid. I was on allergy shots. The doctor said, you guys should really live in Arizona. We went through the whole gamut. A cat would walk by and I'd be not feeling well and coughing up blood. But no one knew why. And ironically, it was my sister, who's older than I am by about 4 years. She got sick and they weren't sure what it was. She was coughing up blood and they checked everything, tuberculosis, cancer. And then the last thing they did was a sweat chloride test and it came back positive for cystic fibrosis. And then they went on to test all of us, the siblings. So I have 4 brothers and sisters and 3 out of 4 of us had cystic fibrosis.
Wow.
So I was in university and of course indestructible. So I was like, oh, whatever, that's okay. Now I'll be fine. And I was just excited that now I'd get the right antibiotics. So I was I didn't see it as a negative. And I don't think I knew enough about it. I just was like, wow, this is, amazing. I'm now going to have to be sick. I'm going to get antibiotics. So I was relatively healthy, to be honest, aside from being on antibiotics a lot. And there were different times that I'd get sick, but I just never really looked at CF as being a negative thing. Like I just was like, oh, I get sick. I get sick and I get sick really bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember racing at the Pan American Games, which was 1995. I qualified for the Pan American Games in triathlon. And I was so sick before I left for Argentina, couldn't make it around the track once, coughing. They threw a gamut of drugs at me, got on inhalers and, I just was super sick. And that was, it was just kind of the reality. I never really thought anything of it, to be honest. And just kept on going about my day,
Wow.
to be fair. And just, kind of dealt with it. And, those are the memories that stick in my head. But, I was probably, I get sick, but antibiotics always helped. So I felt like, okay, well, that's great. I never had a real bad bout, probably until I was 40. And at that time, I had to go on intravenous and go into the hospital. And it probably, as I've gotten older, there's been more complications from CF, a collapsed lung and sort of things like that. But, when I was racing from, I guess, the fitter you are, the less almost, you're still getting sick because you're actually on that razor edge, but it's almost like you can survive things a bit better. So I was super, super fit. And so I'd get on the antibiotics and I'd get healthy. So as time went on, that didn't work quite so well for me. But anyways, it's been an incredible journey and we've seen some amazing advancements. And, I still say my greatest gift is having cystic fibrosis. It's made me who I am.
Absolutely. And how do you see CF from when you were diagnosed kind of today? You've seen a lot of change. And also, did you know how important being an athlete was to staying healthy?
I don't think I realized how important being an athlete was until, maybe when I was around 35 or so. So I retired from the sport when I was 40. And I remember Dr. Tullis, who's our CF doctor here in Ontario, in Canada, leader on all realms, wonderful. And when I did get unwell, she said, when you retire, you're probably not going to be as healthy. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she said, well, you're not going to be working your lungs as much, so you won't be able to get rid of the mucus. And I'm like, yes, I will. And that was kind of one of the big reasons why I've kept so big into my exercise routine, is because I need to clear the mucus from my lungs, because I know that's helped me. And when I was in hospital on intravenous, I remember the doctors coming in and they said, the only reason you're as healthy as you are is because of the sports that you've done. I was getting the typical chest compression physio and things, and I wasn't coughing as much. And they said, what do we need to do to make you cough? And do you want us to get you a bike? Do you want us to do this? I'm like, oh no, I ran stairs this morning in the hospital because I know what I need. Like, I know that I need to get my heart rate up and get my respiration rate up to be coughing things up. Like the standard physio just doesn't work. So they were incredible, looking beyond what would normally work. Let's get you exercising. And when I had a collapsed lung and I had a mucus plug, before they did any procedure at all, they said, you've got 48 hours, go run your brains out. Go run, ride, swim, try to get this out yourself. And then I wasn't able to. So then I had to have a procedure to get the mucus plug out. But it's wonderful that the doctors are not just, they're not just writing a prescription on a pad. They're actually saying, hey, let's get you to move your body. So absolutely, exercise has enabled me to be as healthy as I am. And, that was, when I was on IV, I was on for 5 weeks and sent home. A nurse would come to the house to check things. And sometimes she came and I was on my bike. Now, not riding long, not riding hard, but I was just on my bike. And she's like, what are you doing? You're sick. And I'm like, for 1 hour a day, I don't feel sick. And I just need to do this and it's going to help me get healthy. And that's always been my belief is if I can move, then I can keep my lungs healthy.
And that is fantastic. And that is something, hopefully, that is now being spread through all the CF clinics across the world, honestly, because it was years after my daughters were diagnosed that someone told me, Bob Wild actually with CF, he said how important he found exercise to be and how healthy it was keeping him. And that's when I said to my girls, oh, you've got to participate in every sport you're interested in and continue to walk, run after you graduate college and all of that. And they are, but it's just critical. So I hope that the word is out there, for everyone, because obviously exercise helps all of us, whether we have CF or not. It's so huge. I just don't think we realize it maybe on the day to day.
It's so important for every human being. And like I look at, there's so many different therapies that you can do for CF, really to get your lungs moving. And I think, would you rather be hooked up to a machine making yourself cough or going out and walking, jogging, playing? Which one builds your self-esteem? A machine or going out into the fresh air? And that's what it ends up being about, is we need to build up our feeling of confidence and our feeling of, I'm still strong and powerful, even though I have this genetic disease. So that's such an important thing. And then on a wider scale in society, the best prescription for anxiety, depression is exercise. Hands down. It's got to be the first prescription. And it's not necessarily the solution, but it's part of the solution. Everybody has a different level. But I certainly know that, we all have tough days, and I have tough days too. And I absolutely know. And there are days that I don't want to go out and exercise, and I'm feeling sad and I'm feeling like, what am I doing here on this planet? And I just think to myself, put on your ice shoes and get outside. And this will all look different. And it does. It really, really does.
It's so true. And, obviously I have a different path because I'm the mother of 2 kids with CF. But I tell you, I'm not an athlete, but I do walk 3 miles every day, and it changes your mood 100%.
Yeah.
So important to get out there and do something, whatever it is, that you enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
When you do your coaching, because I checked out everything on your website and the link to your website is in our show notes. When you are doing coaching or speaking, does it depend on your audience, or are you talking always about CF or just about fitness in general? How do you decide what to address?
When I do a talk for a company or a group, I am really talking about the strategies and tactics for successful living. So whether it's to be a great leader, whether it's to be a great business person, whether it's to be a great student, it's to build your greatness. And I look back at my career as a professional athlete, and what were the strategies and tactics? What was the self-talk that enabled me to get the most out of myself? And that's really what my talks are about. But in each talk, I do come back to the fact that I have cystic fibrosis. And really, the contrast is I tell them all about, here's how you're successful. And then I put up a picture of myself on intravenous and say, that's me. It's still me. And really, the message is my superpower, which we all have a superpower, was that I had CF. And it became my superpower because I realized that it wasn't about winning races or about being the richest or the CEO. It wasn't about those things. It was really about bringing hope to families with CF. And once I realized my real purpose, I actually was a better athlete because I had so much reason to put one foot in front of the other. And it allowed me to have incredible perspective. So one year when I raced at the IRONMAN World Championships, I was in the shape of my life. And 5 days before the race, I got very sick. And, I was sad. Like, wow, like I was in the shape of my life. Now I can barely breathe. How do I race against the best women in the world? And it took a couple of days. And then the light bulb went off and the realization of, you're so lucky. You get to race the best women in the world. And you get to do what you love. And there's a reason for that. And so your only mission is to be the best person on the start line with cystic fibrosis and the best person on the start line with a chest infection. So forget about everything else. Forget about trying to win the race. You're sick. You're going to be the best sick person out there. And you're going to race for all those sick people that'll never have a chance to race against the best women in the world. And when I changed my perception, which was the fact was, yeah, you're sick. My attitude was, I'm going to be the best person I can be who's sick. And I got out on that race. It was like God gave me 9 hours where I didn't have CF and I didn't cough. Like I was so sick. I was on ciprofloxacin and, everything was stacked against me. And I had the race of my life because of attitude, because of perspective, because of just embracing who I was and saying, I'm going to be the best that I can be today. And I ended up coming 4th place in the world. And like that was the race of my life. And, the next day I was really sick. It was like, it's just like I said, it was like God gave me 9 hours. Said, okay, go, go and do this. Wow. So I talk about that when I talk to groups and just saying, you've got to put everything into perspective of where you're at and get the most out of who you are. And you might want to be, you're a leader and you want to be the best leader, but you've got to put it into, the fact is that years ago, we were in a pandemic or we're in a recession or whatever it is. All these facts, but your attitude has to be, well, I'm going to rise to the top. I'm going to do what I can with what I've got. And we saw people do that in the pandemic. It's like, everything was shut, restaurants were closed. And then all of a sudden they start doing takeout. So that was the restaurateur that said to himself, yeah, we're all closed, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do takeout. I'm going to do delivery. I'm going to do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he's going to rise to the top. And that's what we all have in our power. We have to find our own power. My superpower was cystic fibrosis, realizing that I've got an opportunity. I have a stage. I might never win the world championships. I may never be the best athlete in the world, but I'm the best athlete and person I can be with CF and put it in my little tiny context. And so we all have to find that superpower.
And what a great lesson that is. Yeah. I mean, I do believe everybody with CF, that is their superpower or their story is their superpower. And that you're all so smart. You have so much to say. You've had so much to think about, right? And you've had so many things to kind of conquer, I guess, it's fair to say. Mm-hmm. When you're competing, I mean, it's all mental. Life is all mental, right? So you have to talk to yourself at every triathlon race. You really have to pump yourself up at each one. And then like that example you just gave when you were sick, oh my gosh, that's incredible. How do you have those conversations with yourself or, back when you were competing, around the world?
There was a lot of conversation. It'd be funny because the day after the race, my husband would say, well, what do you want to do today? I said, I just can't think today. It wasn't, I can't walk today. It was, I can't think today. Because all day yesterday for 9 hours while I raced, all I did was think, telling myself, to push on. So I had different mantras that I would say to myself. So I've already mentioned one, attitude is more important than fact. whatever fact is facing you is not as important as your attitude. I'd also say to myself, anyone can do good when the going is good, but a true champion finds success in adversity. So, I mean, many times I would find myself 15 minutes back on the bike. My forte was the marathon. And so, I would be 50 minutes behind on the bike. That's a lot. Mm-hmm. But my message to myself was, you will find a way. There are many turns of the road and you are going to find a way. They have to ride that hard. Like I would then convince myself, well, they have to ride. Your competitors have to ride that hard because they know you're going to beat them on the run and you're going to catch them on the run. And then I just keep feeding myself things like, if I can see you, I can catch you, and remind myself of my best workouts. Before every race, I would create what I call an asset list. And it's what I recommend to everybody I speak to. So I'd create this list of everything I had going for me. And these were things beyond just training. So of course I would say, you've done these workouts that are going to put you in a position to have a great race. But it was also things like, I'm a great problem solver. I never quit. I'm loved. I'm educated. I have a house. I have my dogs. I have a dream team. I've got a great coach, sports doctor. I've got my CF team. So when I was racing and I was hearing, Lisa, you're 15 minutes down, essentially, you're out of it. That's what they're telling me. I just pull out this asset list and I'd remind myself of everything I had going for me. I'd remind myself, you've never quit in your life. You've never missed a workout. You're a great problem solver. So I would remind myself of all these things. And all of a sudden I felt like I can do this. And I think we all need to do that. That's an example that we can all take into our life. So, for that student going into an exam thinking, oh my goodness, I'm sunk. This is so difficult. They have to go over their asset list. They have to write down, why are they going to be successful? Because they've done their homework, because they've studied, because they've attended every class, because they're hard workers, because they're loved in their family, et cetera, et cetera. And then, that's going to get them into the exam hall. Now they're armed and they're ready to go. Or a business person making a pitch, a presentation, remind themselves, why are you going to get this gig? Why are you going to be successful? Write that asset list down. We need it more than ever because we're living in a society where we're reminded almost every day of how insignificant and inefficient we all are. We were reminded it by everybody else's perfect lives, which we see on social media.
Right.
And so we really need our asset list to say, you know what? I might not be on a beach in Ibiza right now, but I'm surrounded by my mom, my dad, my family. I have a house. I'm loved. I just had a family dinner. Yeah, we just ate normal food. We weren't on some exotic island, but we were together. That's an asset. That's an incredible thing. And yeah, the photos from our family dinner can't compete with the beach in Ibiza, but we're doing pretty good. So that's something that I use now. And I certainly used it when I was racing.
I love that. And I'm going to do an asset list for losing weight. When I think about all of my accomplishments, then there's my weight. And I think, how come I just can't lose the weight? Like, I am such a loser. I mean, everybody always has something, right? So I need to rethink that. Because as a CF parent, I was eating every stick of butter they were eating, in macaroni and cheese growing up. So I always use that example because that's what my kids always wanted, macaroni and cheese. But that is my journey right now, is trying to get all this weight off.
Yeah, it's a process. It's hard. I often will see someone like, you might be struggling with, how do I lose 5 pounds or 10 pounds or whatever it is. But for every pound you can't lose, you're probably sitting at a doctor's appointment with your kids instead of at a fitness class. You don't live the same life. You might be driving an hour to the CS clinic so that your kids can live. Right. You might be visiting them in the hospital. And, when they were young and they were maybe sick and they needed you, you weren't able to go off to the personal trainer. As times change, perhaps you can schedule in the personal trainer. But we have to look at our life. We have to look at our weakness. Or what are we not great at? There's so much that we're great at. And we don't give ourselves credit.
Right.
But there's things we're great at and there's things we're not. So the things that we're not, then we need help with. So often with people that struggle to do exercise, the most important thing is they find community. So whether they find a workout partner or you hire that personal trainer, it might cost you $75 2 times a week. But if you do it for 4 to 6 weeks, now you've created a habit. And now you might not need the personal trainer anymore. And that $75 2 times a week might save your life because now you've lost X number of pounds. For someone who's maybe on the verge of diabetes because of, their weight or food or whatever it happens to be, maybe now they're not going to have to be on diabetes medicine. Yeah, they dropped $150 a week, but now they're healthy, they're living well, they're happy and really proud of their journey. So my message to anyone struggling with weight or getting a fitness plan is create the habit. It's not going to be easy. Easy now means difficult later.
Right.
So it is so easy to sit down and eat 5 donuts.
Right.
It's not easy for me, but it's easy for others to eat 5 donuts. But the difficulty comes later when your clothes don't fit or when the doctor tells you you've got diabetes. So easy now, difficult later. Difficult now means easy later. So by making it difficult now, which might be saying no to dessert or no to this, it's going to become easier later on when now you don't have to go to the doctor. You don't have to go on that medication. You're not going in to have, bypass surgery, whatever it happens to be. Hard now means easy later. And it is hard. So I think it's recognizing that the things that we want aren't easy. The path less traveled is sometimes what we have to take, going to be a bit difficult. But within 3 weeks, we form a routine. We form a habit.
Yeah.
And so if you can sort of start and just make a habit and then forgive yourself if you fall off. We have to forgive ourselves and just say, okay, next day I'm back on. And we get back to it, whatever the routine is that we need.
Yeah. And I see why you're a coach, because you're great. This knowledge that you've given already in this short amount of time is fantastic. And I have to say that if I don't get my walk in, that is the highlight of my day, pretty much, is just that 1 hour every day that I take. So it is really important mentally. I wanted to ask you, when you're speaking to people, different groups, whether it's a CF group or not, what is the feedback that you get from people, whether or not you mention CF, but just what we've even heard from you, making us think differently and do an asset list and kind of giving yourself credit? What's the response you get from people?
They feel empowered. They feel like, wow, I can do that. And it depends what I'm speaking to. For some people, it will be making a change in their life. Like they've been afraid, they've been doing status quo, but they know they need that project, that next step, which is risky. It's risky. And then after I speak, they can often say, you know what, I'm going to do that. I'm going to get uncomfortable, get out of my comfort zone. Because that's one of the messages that I give as well is get out of your comfort zone. And I'm quite honest. No one feels like going swimming at 5 a.m, not even me. No one feels like going running. Nobody. But you got to do the things you don't want to do. That's the message, is do what you don't want to do. So they kind of take that message and go, yeah, you know what? I really do need to do that project. And for a lot of people, it does come back to fitness. I did this talk for a group in Atlanta, and I was really lucky because I got to do 2 talks. So one was Tuesday, one was Wednesday. Sometimes I go and do a talk and I'm there and I might have lunch with people and then I'm gone. But I got to stay overnight. And so I go to the gym the next day. And so I was in the gym the morning at the first talk, and then I was in the gym the next morning after I'd done one talk. And I'm in there and people from the group were coming over to me while I was working out and just saying, I haven't worked out in ages, but I'm here this morning. And then someone else said, I'm not allowed to have a piece of cake until I do an hour on the elliptical. And then someone saying, you walked, you're here, and I'm like, yeah, I am. And so it was a really wonderful way to mesh with people. And then just intermingling with them, and they're, might be having a beer or something, like, Lisa, don't watch us have this beer. And I'm like, it's okay. People, the takeaway is quite often fitness related, that they are like, yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to get healthy. I'm going to eat healthier. I'm going to get into fitness. And a lot of people, I'm going to take on that new task. I'm going to do that project. I'm going to do a better job. I'm going to find my purpose in my work. I'm going to find what drives me. So I get a lot of that as well. I'm going to, not necessarily quit their job, but strive for something else. It's really wonderful. And it's often like when I was a student, we would go on retreats, and I went to Catholic school. And so we'd go to a Catholic community area, and almost like you're sort of getting back in touch with your faith. We all live in a very secular society. And so we'd have a day where we'd be with nuns and priests, and they'd be telling us sort of stories, and you'd leave there and you feel like a better Christian. And it's kind of like that when I do a talk, is that I'm not necessarily going to change the world, but it's almost like, okay, I'm ready to go back to work now. I like my job. I like what I do. So that's sort of the feeling that I get afterwards. And that's what I'm hoping, is to give people that that drive and that push to get out of their comfort zone, to do the thing they don't want to do, because they know that that's going to bring them fulfillment.
And I also think, because I've thought this, I can't complain because I've seen what my girls go through.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to get out there and work out because I tell them they need to, and they have CF. And my daughter recently was doing a speech, and my husband and I were both there listening to her, and she was talking about how she could barely go 2.6 miles. And then after she got on the CF modulator, she was like, she was running and she almost got to 2 miles, and she realized she almost got to 2 miles. She goes, I stopped. I called my boyfriend and I said, you have healthy lungs. Why aren't you running every day?
Yeah.
And so I took that message from her, like, yeah, I've got nothing to complain about. I can get out there every day. I have nothing holding me back. So it really incentivized me, I guess, if that's a word. It really motivated me to just keep it going.
Yes.
And I think you're a great motivator too. I mean, you've done triathlons, like the stuff you've done, and you have CF. So that's incredible.
Yeah, it definitely takes away the excuses from people. And I hear from my own athletes, because we just went through a bunch of wildfires up here, which may have affected you in Michigan. And it made the air quality quite bad and made it difficult to breathe in. They were all sending me messages. I don't really want to go running today, but I can only imagine how your lungs feel. It's like, well, yeah, I'm only, run at 6 a.m. before it blows in. But there's often, oh, it's so cold that I don't know if I can run today. But you have CF and you're still running. It's like, well, we're all different. You do the best that you can with what you've got. And that's really all that we can do. But definitely, I know that my athletes understand that I have CF, and they kind of go, how can I complain? You've got CF. Like, yeah, but I only know CF. Like, I don't know any different.
Yeah, but I mean, I think you're incredible. And this is probably what you have talked about in your book, An Unlikely Champion, because when you started out, you didn't know that you had CF and you kept it going.
Yeah, I had no idea I had CF when I started racing. I kind of just said to myself, well, you can't quit. Like, that wasn't any part of my DNA, was quitting. It's like, well, you just do what you can with what you've got. So if you get sick, you go on antibiotics. Like, it's not like you're in a forest or you're living in a third world country where you don't have access to healthcare. You have access to healthcare. You have antibiotics. I didn't realize really the effects of antibiotics on my racing. I don't think I realized, obviously, it dulls the effort a bit. Of course, ciprofloxacin can lead to Achilles tendon issues, which it did in me.
Wow.
And at the time, I didn't realize that. So I've had Achilles surgery. I just kind of looked at it as, well, this is who you are. So you're not perfect, but you're going to be perfect at being someone with CF. And that's all we can do, is we take our weaknesses and we become perfect at being who we are. So yeah, no, I'm never going to be as fast as the world champion. I'm going to be the world champion of CF. That's all I can do. And so I just kind of looked at it that way.
You're incredible. And you're in 2 halls of fame. You've done so much, as I mentioned in the introduction. How, in your view, has sports changed for women? I mean, I like now that play like a girl is a positive and not an insult. I like that women have turned that around. But how have you seen things change? And I mean, we still have a long way to go.
We do have a long way to go, but there has been great change. I mean, I saw it in my sport. There were some races that I competed at that didn't have equal prize money between men and women. That has changed a lot right now. I had it happen when I raced at IRONMAN Germany. I went to IRONMAN Germany in 2005. I got an appearance fee to go. I won prize money. I won the race. That was 2005. The next year, I got invited back and they said, we have no appearance money for you. So I was a defending champion, but they weren't going to give me appearance money to come. They still gave me prize money, but they wouldn't give me appearance money. Wow. And I'm like, how is this possible that you are not going to give me money to come? And they said, well, German media is who pays the appearance money, and they're only going to televise the men's race. And so that means we have no money for the women.
Oh my gosh.
And so I said, well, I simply can't come. And it really wasn't a dollar thing, because there's so many races don't even give appearance money. But it's like, I can't show up there when I know the men are getting appearance money because the media is going to focus on them. That just doesn't speak well to my beliefs for equality.
Right.
So I didn't end up going to defend my title. So I feel like as women, we have to be a bit courageous that way. We don't have to necessarily be, I never even said anything about that to the public. There was certainly no social media in those days, nor would I. Like, I'm not going to put down an event that is a wonderful, wonderful event. So I'm not looking to create controversy. It was something I took away with me. And it just helped me to continue to build my own courage. For me, for somebody else, it might have been totally fine to go. But for me, I couldn't do that with my own sound mind, race on unequal platform. But we're very fortunate in Canada, the United States. We have great representation by women in triathlon. It's almost 50-50. And if you look at running races in North America, it's sometimes women outnumber men, which is incredible. We're doing a lot that we're getting more women involved in sport, which is important. We have to obviously start with young girls, teenagers, empower them to do sport because that helps to end the cycle of teenage pregnancy, which ends the cycle of poverty as well. So we're doing a lot of great things. But really, it's delivering that message to women. So this year at the IRONMAN World Championships in Hawaii, it's an all women's field. And then the men are racing in Nice, France. So I'm going to be at the World Championships in Hawaii this year, not as an athlete, but as a supporter and ambassador for women and celebrating our Canadian athletes. We're going to give them all t-shirts that have Canadian flag on them and march together. And however I can be a role model to other women doing sport, I don't see male, female. I really don't. I just see myself as an athlete and I want everybody to do sport. But in particular, I don't want to see any roadblocks for women to be doing sport.
I agree. And you are such a pioneer and changing the world in so many ways. It's just fantastic to talk to you. And you've talked about how CF has played a role in your athletics. As you do the coaching and everything that you're doing, what do you see as you're continuing, in your future? I mean, you're so young still. You've got so much more to give back. Where are you going to take yourself?
I've been asking myself the same question. I'm always looking for something big. Like I really want to have like a massive purpose. And, I'm reminded that I do, and that when I do a talk, that it does have impact and purpose. But it's important to me. I'm a very driven person, and I've always driven myself to do things I shouldn't have been able to do, to be quite honest. I should not have 111 Ironman. There's just no way. So I'm looking for that next thing, and I don't know what it will be. But in the meantime, I'll coach, and I'll coach with love, and I will do my speaking and try to share my message. But yeah, of course, I would love to be able to change the world in some way, in some impactful way. And, maybe that'll come across and I'll be able to do that in some form. My mom says, well, what do you want to do? Be the prime minister? Yeah. I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. Although I'm not very political, but I'd want to just go save the world. But yeah, I mean, I do look at female role models like Jacinda Ardern of New Zealand. I think, wow, like I wish I could be like her. Wish I could have that kind of impact. So it'd be fun to find my little niche and then be able to sink my teeth into it.
That is wonderful. We've only learned just a little bit about you. It's great that we got to talk about everything, and everyone should read your book, An Unlikely Champion. In show notes, people can find you that way and find your website. Thank you so much for sharing your story. There's so much more I want to learn about you, and we'll have to talk again because I'm so inspired by you. So thank you.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. And to all the people that are going to be listening, just be the best that you can be with what you have. Get out of your comfort zone. But most importantly, be your own biggest fan. We really have to cheer for ourselves. And if you can't do it, then find a friend who can be your booster squad.
Thank you, Lisa. The original music in this podcast is performed by Kevin Allen.
It's not complicated.
Who happens to have cystic fibrosis.
We all got our worries and fears. I know it's got you frustrating. But loving you is so alright.
This has been the Living with Cystic Fibrosis podcast. For more information and to learn more about the Bonnell Foundation, visit our website at thebonnellfoundation.org. That's the BONNELL Foundation.org. This podcast was sponsored by Victories, Genentech, and Vertex. It was produced by Jag and Detroit Podcasts. Follow our show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening right now.